Good morning. I'd like to call to order the May 26th public hearing for the City of Tampa's Barrio Latino Commission. Welcome, everyone. I'm Rich Simmons, Chair of the Commission. If you are here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, wall sections. Staff presents staff report. We'll then ask for public comment. Please state and spell your name clearly. If you're here to speak for or against the project, your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments. Following public comment, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. Next, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. After the public hearing is closed, no further testimony can be given. The commissioners will then discuss the case and make their decision based upon Chapter 27 of the City Code of Ordinances, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, Historic Preservation Development Review Committee comments, and the testimony given today at this public hearing. The BLC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtaining any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones. And we'll start with the introduction of my other fellow commissioners on my left.
Good morning, Chase Corley.
Good morning, Ansley Blackwell-Wright.
Vivian Salaga.
And from staff today, we have Dennis Fernandez, Ron Vila, Jared Barnum, Heather Bonds, and Dana Crosby-Collier from legal. We have 2 packets of meeting minutes in our packet. From April 28th and May 5th, has everyone had a chance to review? Are there any comments, or could we entertain a motion?
Move to accept.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of accepting both the minutes from the April 28th and May 5th meetings, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Fernandez.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Welcome to this morning's public hearing, both to you and to those in our audience and our applicants. I did want to just present the BLC staff approvals for April into the record. We can adopt those by motion at the conclusion of the meeting. And then also, just to bring to your attention, we do have our current bricks and mortar newsletter in your packet. It features the rebricking of 7th Avenue. The most recent segment of the rebricking was completed between 17th and 19th Streets on 7th Avenue, with subsequent phases to occur in the next few years. I did want to make that the focus of our preservation and progress this month, since this is such a significant accomplishment in the historic district. And so Ron's going to present that for us this morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. And to continue on the subject that Dennis alluded to, the segment that we'll be discussing this morning is 7th Avenue rebricking. This was an initiative through the city and the community to work together to bring back the restoration of 7th Avenue, rebricking from Nucio to 26th Street, which you see here. This is the western portion of 7th Avenue, and as we continue to the east. So far, this joint effort through the city and the community has taken place for 4 blocks. The first segment was 2 blocks. We're taking them at 2-block intervals, and then we continued working to the east to conclude the portions that are done all the way to 19th, from 15th to 19th Street. This is just an earlier shot within Ybor City. This is of 9th Avenue. You see El Pasaje in the background. This is 9th Avenue, but you see the infancy of Ybor City. On that same vein, in 1910, it's very labor intensive laying the bricks there, but this is something that is very common within historic districts in general and within Ybor City's historic district on 7th and 8th and 9th Street. And then I think we got a little ahead of ourselves. You know, we put the bricks down and then we pull them back up. So in 1951, this is showing picking up the bricks, not in a very sensitive way, but discarding them. Using our criteria in the Ybor City Design Guidelines, the appropriate materials for some of the horizontal paving is the bricks. You see some concrete sidewalks out there, and then you have the hex pavers that also are introduced into the district. Just to give you some background, it was funded by the CRA. Roughly about 140 bricks were used for the 4 blocks. Every time we do a 2-block section, there are about 70,000 bricks, and that's minus the intersection. We're going to go back and get the intersections at a later date. The historic bricks have been collected and stored and maintained by the city in accordance with city code. The bricks are protected by ordinance. Due to the limited supply, we look at them and see which ones rise to the level that they should be reused in the district. And the rebricking just brings back the historical integrity and enhances the district, and it's a natural traffic calming device as well. So there's many people that get involved with the rebricking of the streets, from the underlayment and the bricks themselves. And then we engineer the streets to make sure that the water flow and the traffic is maintained. This was part of phase 2. You saw in the early 1900s that it was labor intensive, and nothing has changed. It's still very labor intensive, the brick streets. And you see how the buildings frame the street. This is 7th Avenue. It had the trolley back in the day. You see the trolley down here. Obviously, we don't have the trolley. The trolley's on 8th Avenue. But this is our goal here, to reestablish the bricks through the whole commercial corridor of 7th Avenue. That concludes this portion of the preservation in progress. Continuing down our agenda, I'll have legal address if there's any conflicts of interest in our ex parte communication.
Good morning, Dana Crosby Collier from Legal. Would like to ask if any member has a conflict of interest with any item on the agenda this morning.
None.
Okay. And has any member engaged in an ex parte communication regarding any item on the agenda this morning?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Moving down our agenda, under continuations, there are none reflected. So we'll go into the swear-in. Mr. Varnon will swear everybody in. Everybody that wishes to testify, please stand up and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony being provided today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Moving forward to our first agenda item is BLC-26-0000117. There's multiple addresses associated with this parcel. The first one is 1419 East 4th Avenue, and the second address is 1402 North 15th Street. Moving forward, we are going to review 2 requests. The first one is for a variance for a grand tree removal. We'll see how that moves forward. If it gets a favorable recommendation, then we'll move into a preliminary approval for a certificate of appropriateness for a 3-story venue with site improvements. Just some past action on this property. If you look on page 4, in 2021, a comp plan amendment came forward and was approved. And in 2022, it came forward for a rezoning as well. We are going to focus on the first agenda item, which is for the variance for a grand tree removal. In your packets, you have, and you can follow along, an exhibit here for a reasonable configuration of the site. And then as you get toward the end of this publication here, there are 6 hardship criteria that must be answered as well. Their team is very versed, and they understand that they need to go through that in totality, and they'll have an expert here to speak on that agenda item. And then we also have natural resources here if you have any questions for them. I'm going to show just a couple of photos here. The subject site is under construction now. It's known as Gasworks. The highlighted area here is what we're going to focus on. To the north, you have Fourth Avenue. To the south, you have Third Avenue. And to the west, you have Republic de Cuba. And to the east, you have 15th Street. If you notice, the whole block is not shaded in. To the west of the subject site is a Tico substation that I'll show you some pictures as well. This is a Sanborn map to show that what the subject site looked like back in 1929. There were multiple structures on the site at that time. There is still one contributing structure on that site, and as part of this request moving forward, if the two requests are to move forward, that there's going to be a condition imposed on this preliminary approval that the grand tree receive a favorable recommendation for the removal, and that the contributing structure is relocated. Once again, looking at an aerial, you have Fourth Avenue to the north, you have Third Avenue to the south, Avenida Republic de Cuba to the west, and 15th Street to the east. This is looking at the contributing structure. That is not part of any discussion this morning, but I wanted to show you that the structure is on site and it will have to be relocated as part of this overall project moving forward. This is the front elevation and this is the south elevation. This is looking back at the site with the contributing structure and some of the trees that are there. This tree back here is the grand tree that you will be discussing this morning. This is a close-up of that grand tree. As you look at the subject site, which is over here, to the east, across 15th Street, you have some historic structures. This is just a close-up of that structure. Going to this new construction across 4th Avenue to the north. There are multiple structures on site. They are non-contributing structures, which could be removed administratively. That's why you're not looking at that. To the south, across 3rd Avenue, is these metal buildings. To the west of the subject site is that power plant that I spoke about. And why I kept the presentation to a minimum, the photo presentation, is because there's a lot of construction there. There's a lot of streets that have been temporarily closed, but this is part of the construction that is associated with gasworks. That concludes the photo presentation. And I believe we could start on the variance, so Catler's team could come up.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Graham Terrell, located 1902 14th Street in Ybor. I'm here to represent part of the master developer team. We do have a presentation. If they could put that up on the screen, that'd be great. I'm going to do a quick introduction, a bit of background on Gasworks as the master development first, and then I'm going to let Ricky Patrica speak specifically to the tree in question. So I know a lot of you guys were not part of the original approvals for Gasworks, so I just wanted to spend a minute just to kind of reiterate some things here. So the Gasworks PDA was approved back in 2022. This body was part of that approval process. And part of that as rezoning really kind of looked at the overall massing, density, and sort of the look and feel of the future development, redevelopment of the Gasworks area. So to that degree, there was already a lot of focus on these type of images which really addressed that massing and height. And obviously one of the interesting things about Gasworks is it overlaps the historic district and then transitions down further south to the south edge of Ybor and even touching close to the Channel District. So you can see here in this image, the E5 site sits in the north. We're looking south, obviously, here towards the Ybor Channel. And you can see the E5 site, which is the site in question, was shown as a 5-story, at that time, 65-foot height building, occupying the entire site. And really, again, the approval letter we received from the Barrio Latino at the time stated clearly that, we wanted to ensure scale and massing compatible with our historic district. So this really is a transitional site. This is an image of the site today. As Ron Villa pointed out there, it is an interesting site because half the site is occupied by a TECO substation. So thinking of this as a use for the overall mixed, use development of gasworks is it's a tough site. It's compromised by that substation, makes it very difficult, for example, for residential, having that use right next door. And also because of the size of the site, it really limits the amount of land we have there. So as we started thinking about a music venue for this site, that really was an ideal use for this sort of half block, if you will, and with the limit on the height as well. Part of the approvals we received for the PDA included design guidelines book. It's a fairly extensive, about 75 pages of really sort of parameters and restrictions on the development of the gasworks project. And this is just a sample from that, but I think it's interesting just to point out that really the intent has always been with the gasworks that it is an urban development, that the buildings really address the street, that we have strong facade treatments along the street front. And there was really never any intent to have sort of setbacks in yards and courts in this, to really kind of reflect the character of Ybor. And this is another image just showing you again how the E5 site sits within the overall gasworks plan there. But again, using best practices, we really wanted to make sure this is a fully developed community with all aspects, residential, workplaces, retail, recreational areas. And one of the things that's also worth noting in this particular image is that, obviously, again, thinking about high-density urban development, we do need green spaces, obviously, within that. Part of the plan here includes a park, which is currently already, slated for construction in the coming 12 months. So that park really will serve as the main open space and the recreation for gasworks. And so to that degree, really individual sites on these small Ybor blocks don't need those sort of big open areas and setbacks. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ricky Patrica.
Thank you. Ricky Patrica, 308 East 7th Avenue, Dark Moss. I have been sworn. That's still up, great. The tree in question is a 40-inch live oak located in the interior of the property, about 30 feet in west of 15th Avenue. This would be within the development buildable envelope of any parcel or any zoning district within the YC limits. By almost 30 feet in most cases. The tree was rated B6, which is essentially good. The B is the condition rating or health. The 6 is on a scale of 3 to 12 for its hazard rating using the city's standard rating list. And its current impact, if proposed, to the existing site plan would be about 30%, which would be in reduction of about 12,000 square feet of footprint. That's not total building area, just the footprint of the building. It would disrupt multiple program elements of the building, including lobby entrance, seating, mezzanine seating, restroom, and support facilities. And if it were preserved in place and the building were to wrap around to the extent it could clear of the canopy, the building would exceed the height of the tree and put it in a chasm, if you will, which would affect the survivability over time due to a change in light. Oop. Sorry. Here's a plan of it in relation of the location of the tree. At the center of the crosshairs, the minimum tree protection radii per the city of Tampa is the orangish circle, and the canopy of the tree is the green ellipse. The proposed building footprint is in yellow, and the amount of building less out that would be required with some pruning is shown in the dash purple. So the questions we have to ask when making this kind of request are the reasonable reconfiguration criteria. This is specific to tree preservation. And in a simplistic sense, it's can the roots of the canopy be preserved? Can the placement of the building be adjusted or the height adjusted? Are there any utilities? Obviously no. And what is the offset to the preservation, the offset in the building yield. So when we take each one by one, there is a direct trunk conflict, so we can't use any special design techniques like pervious paving or suspended slab because the tree is in the building currently. We can't change the placement of the building because the PDA design guidelines and the PDA site plan envision a block type development with effectively 0-foot setbacks. So the building can only move off-site into the TICO, substation, obviously that's not permitted, or into the right-of-way, also not permitted. The size and height cannot be modified without losing the program requirements of a venue of this type. And the height can't be increased because we're limited by the historic, or the Barrio Latino height limits and the PDA limits of 65 feet. Setbacks are irrelevant due to the 0-foot setback nature of this type of development. The reduction in use and value is addressed or is captured in the type of facility we're proposing. We're entitled 84,000 square feet of floor area per the PDA, and we can't make up that area by increasing any height. We can only less out the tree, which would be an impact to the internal form and function of the building if the tree were preserved in place. And if we, again, did a less out for the tree, it would impact the urban form relative to the street setbacks proposed within the district and approved both by this body and by City Council in prior hearings. So with that, we're requesting the removal of a 40-inch southern live oak, non-hazardous 40-inch southern live oak, due to the inability to reasonably reconfigure this site plan as envisioned in the PDA, in the approved PDA. That concludes my presentation.
We have 1 minute left. Do we do an extension? Yeah. Okay. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ken Keller, architect with TVS. I'll be the architect for this project. We have 55 seconds left for an architecture presentation. Would like an extension of time.
How much time would you like, Mr. Coward?
You want the fast version or the slow version?
I'd like a complete presentation.
6 minutes. 6 minutes would be enough.
Motion for 10.
Move to grant 6 minutes extension to the presentation.
Thank you.
Can we amend that to 10?
Amend that to 10.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you. If we could have the presentation put up on the screen there. Ron is passing out updates to our previous submittal.
It's only the tree.
I was told it's the tree and the architecture.
They're gonna vote on the tree first. Or we definitely get 10 minutes, I guess.
Yeah, I was told it was both. Are we doing this correct, Ron? I thought it was one full presentation.
So we're gonna focus on the variance request this morning to remove the grand tree. As part of this, you're showing the massing model, why the tree needs to be removed, just so you have 6 minutes.
Okay, cool. Thank you for having me today. I once sat in your seat, so it's a pleasure to present to you today. We've talked about the context, but I just want to talk about the context of the site in architectural terms. As far as you can see in the orange blocks here, this is the portion of gasworks that's been developed thus far or is under construction today. The red is the subject site, and it was important to indicate the trolley and the parking location because what's very important about this site is the entry and exit of patrons to the music venue and the operation of the music venue, how it can operate within the city without disrupting the way the city functions in that area. From an architectural concept, we took this block and broke it down into 3 pieces. We broke it into the main building, which is a stuccoed building with large windows and an E-board balcony on 15th. A southern building, which gives the idea of a modern warehouse building with a brick facade, limited windows, and then a entry building, which is on the corner of 3rd and 15th, that will have dimensional brick facade, the entry glass doors, a stepped entrance into the building, and the important marquee. The entry into the building, because of the townhomes that are to the north and the residential to the north, we felt it very important to locate the entry to the building to the south and to the east. This provides limited disruption to the existing residents that are to the north. So most of the patrons will enter from the southeast, while we will still maintain a premium entry to the north. The premium entry is limited to only 400 people, while the main entry is the larger entrance. We also, what's very important on music venues is not only entry, but the exit. As people leave the building and flood onto the street, you can see that we are exiting most of the building onto the Paseo and also onto the southeast corner. Further to that, we've located our loading and our trash areas to the south to limit the disruption to the neighbors to the north. We do have electrical service to the north based on the existing grid. The building is, while we are allowed the 65-foot height, we are not going to 65 feet around the perimeter. We have reduced the height of the building to roughly 50 feet on all 4 sides and keeping the high bay in the middle of the building at 65 feet. We felt this was important to maintain the 3-story view and architectural character of Ybor City. A quick rundown of our materials. We will be using dimensional brick at the entry, precast concrete panels at the Tico yard because of constructability against the Tico yard, corrugated metal panel at the high bay so that is limited aesthetically, where the focus of the building is going to be on the brick and the stucco down below. Normal storefront windows, stucco, powder-coated aluminum railing at the Ybor balcony, and a good use of glass block to go with the warehouse look of the building. Oh, let's go back to this. What's very important is that the marquee is a non-activated display. That would be a manual change out, no moving images, LCD screens, and the like. Getting into the architecture of the building, we'll go facade by facade.
I think you did enough of that. That just for the variance. Get into that later on through the certificate of appropriateness.
I thought you wanted both. I thought you wanted to present both right now.
Just real quick.
I'm okay.
I think that we're getting outside of the.
I thought you wanted both at once.
I think we're getting out of the variance portion now. I thought when we spoke earlier, I wanted him to give a comprehensive lay of the land, walk you around so you could see some of the challenges that are there at that site as what they're delivering. And then I think that concludes that portion of it. And you could get into the CA if the variance is approved. Okay. I understand. Yeah.
So the applicant has a few minutes left if they want to.
No, that would conclude.
I understand. The applicant group has a few minutes left on their variance request. They can use this time to complete their presentation and fill in any holes in their presentation at this point in time, or we can close the public hearing, or we can conclude that.
Go ahead and close.
Good morning, Ron Vila, staff for Historic Preservation. At this point, you should focus on the variance request for the removal of the grand tree. It's a finding of fact. They had their professional come up. They provided documentation that you have in your packet. They went through it. There is additional information that should be put onto the record as well, as far as the 6 hardship criteria on the last 2 pages of the information that they filled out and they presented to us. We do have natural resources here to answer any questions from the city staff. And as I stated, we work with our team to provide you with a comprehensive presentation so you can see the footprint of the building, you can see the aesthetics of the building, the height of the building, some of the background that was associated with the PDA that came forward. All of that is on the table as you focus on the variance request this morning. So I'm here to answer any questions, and they're available as well. Oh, one last thing, there are 12 letters that have been submitted into the record, and that is for the variance and for the CA.
Okay, very good. Okay, we can open this up for public comment. If anyone from the public wishes to comment, please come forward to address the mic. Dana? Yeah, I know.
Okay, yeah, all
There was a-
witnesses must be sworn.
I know. There was a, yeah, he needs to be sworn. Or anyone else wishing to give public comment needs to be sworn at this point in time too. There was,
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony being provided today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Am I able to go?
please state your name and address and then you can proceed.
Angel
3
D'Angelo,
minutes.
2215 East 17th Avenue in Ybor, 33605. So I know we're here today to talk about the removal of the Grand Oak in favor of Live Nation, and this is a historic preservation board. So I think when we look at history of Ybor City, we have to look at it holistically. So the tree is just one aspect, but I don't think it's possible to bring in a giant corporate music venue and keep the historic history of Ybor preserved, because the thing that makes Ybor so special is the local art scene, as well as the nature, the chickens, the locally owned restaurants and bars. Giant corporate venues just don't have the ability to bring that same substance to a place like Ybor City. And I'm not alone in that thought. Yesterday I sent to this review board a petition that had over 6,000 signatures, which I have here. You can visually see how large it is. These are signatures primarily from people in the Ybor and other surrounding areas in Tampa that are asking you to not approve this, and we will continue with this forward if you do approve it to what the next steps are, all the way up to City Council. Ybor City is already in a lot of danger. I mean, I'm sure the folks behind me don't all agree with that, but Gasworks is not going to make Ybor what it was. It's not going to do anything for the people that have been there and have made Ybor the special place that it is. In fact, it's pushing all of us out. It's super expensive to live in Ybor City right now. I'm only able to afford it because I have a private landlord that owns a home and isn't completely unethical. But like when I'm looking for rent, like through traditional means, it's like nearly $2,000 for a 1-bedroom in Ybor City. So that's ridiculous. The people that have made Ybor thrive are not able to even live or sustain in Ybor City. And this is another step towards, I mean, it's really putting a final nail in the coffin to what we have left in Ybor City. Tampa has what the city council and the mayor Castro would say has grown, and it has been revitalized. That's the language they use. But as a resident of Tampa, I would say it is really pushing all of us out. So I sent this all to you. Am I able to submit it to you in person, or there you go? So I really hope you'll consider that, as you think about what decisions you make, not just about the Grand Oak tree, but the holistic review of Ybor in its fullness. We're really losing something special. The Ybor City literally is what made put Tampa on the map, from the cigar industry to the music industry now. When people come to visit Tampa and they say, where is it that I go for fun? We don't say downtown. We don't say Channelside or whatever y'all call it now. We say Ybor City. So we're taking that last bit away. There's going to be nothing special about Tampa, and we're just going to look like every other city, and we can't even afford to live in it.
Hello, my name is Leslie Matern. I live at 209 North McDill Avenue, and I wanted to come here to speak to oppose BLC 26000117, both the variance and the preliminary certificate of appropriateness. So a little bit about me. I've been a patron of Ybor for 22 years, specifically going for music and art. I've seen probably over 600 music and art shows in Ybor since I've been going there. And I also love Ybor history, so that's why I feel it's appropriate to speak to this body today. I don't just love Ybor for what it has been, but I also love the idea of what it can be. But I think it's still built off of what it is at its core, which is a community of working class people, immigrants, small businesses, artists, and families, and they've built something lasting with their hands, with their creativity, and that is important to the context, as other folks have mentioned today, the context of your decision. So look at Ybor's history. It's not about beautiful architecture only. It's always been about what's happening in between the beautiful architecture and within those buildings. There's a strong history of social clubs, of artist communities, of theaters, and then the small businesses and neighbors that support those things. Again, this is the context of your decision. And I think it's really exciting that we have folks like you making this decision, because in a world where almost everything is impacted by what can we do with AI, we have the discernment of humans today to be able to say, we don't understand how this particular idea supports the history of Ybor and where we want it to move forward if we are going to be champions of that history. I think also one of the important aspects of what we need to consider is the compatibility of who is requesting this project. And I understand that the Barrio is not here to make decisions on whether we like or dislike Live Nation, but I do think that it's a part of your decision to understand compatibility. And whether Live Nation can come in with a slick group of folks to make it look like Ybor does not mean that it actually belongs in Ybor. We're talking about a company that, I mean, this is kind of irrelevant, but it isn't. They've mocked our city and called us stupid and told us that we are going to take advantage of you. And then now we're building a 75,000 square foot building in the middle of your prize jewel, your historic district. That doesn't make any sense. We're not here to take away more space from the vibrancy of what actually Ybor City represents, which is community and independent art and independent music. We are here to continue to strengthen what exists and grow it for the future. And we are here to tell our children that we're going to protect what exists, we're going to grow it better, and we're not going to make decisions that allow predatory companies into Ybor.
Good morning. My name is Clark Brooks. My address is 5411 Park Place, 33603. I am a Tampa resident, writer, and stand-up comedian. I also have over 30 years of experience in sports and entertainment administration at the former Sundome and whatever we're calling the hockey arena this week. I realize advocating for the romantic aspects of this situation may not be the most persuasive argument. Expansion, growth, and development are all very important, and you wouldn't be doing your jobs if you didn't take them into consideration. But I'm here to plead the case that we shouldn't pursue those considerations at the expense of our identity. A similar 3,500-seat project was just announced for Water Street, a mile and a half away from this site. We simply don't need multiple facilities like this, especially in Ybor. There's only one Starbucks between those two. We need funky, sweaty places with graffiti in the bathroom where unnecessary luxury amenities aren't readily available just by waving your credit card at some underpaid part-time staffer in a vest and a name tag, which is what the overwhelming majority of the 440 jobs will be that Live Nation claims this place will create. The venues that will suffer to the point of extinction aren't just places for some of us to express our self-indulgent need for attention. Well, they are, for some of us, but they're more than that. They're places for people to support their friends and neighbors' self-indulgent needs for attention. And even more important than that, they're places to gather, to meet friends, to meet new people, or just to spend a little time relaxing and stimulating themselves away from whatever stresses they have to deal with the rest of the time, without having to spend a significant chunk of their hard-earned money. Look at the tension level everywhere around the world right now. There is real value in providing an opportunity for people to unwind, even just a little bit, for the sake of our overall collective well-being. What we need is more neighborhoods where human beings live, work, eat, and play, not more destination districts designed to draw targeted consumers who will robustly invest their discretionary income. Once we're willing to sacrifice our identity, who we truly are, there's no limit to what we'll accept. It leaves us with uncomfortable questions we'll have to answer about ourselves. Should we replace all the Tampa Bay sports team mascots and logos with barcodes? Why don't we get rid of the Columbia and put up an Applebee's? Does anybody really want to trade the 1905 salad for BOGO riblets? Let's do the right thing now so we don't have to answer such stupid questions later. Thank you.
Is anyone else from the public wishing to comment? Please come forward. Have you been sworn? Come forward.
No, I should swear.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony being provided today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Good morning. I just want to make a quick point.
Please identify
Sorry,
yourself.
Christian Leon, and I'm at 2010 East Palm
Thank you.
Avenue. Just a quick point. I know that people here are just lovers of Ybor City history, and I understand that. But my one thing that I want to bring to the attention of the commission is that a lot of times we get fixated on Ybor City history from a certain time period, and I think we always talk about the late 1800s, the early 1900s, the cigar boom, all that stuff. However, you know, being born and raised in Tampa, Ybor City's also been different. And, you know, if we go back to the 80s when I started going out to Ybor in the 90s and everything, there is a massive amount of people in Tampa that have always seen Ybor City as an arts district, and especially a performing arts district. And the music venues, the concerts, and all those things is a really integral part of what history is. I mean, I think going back to the 80s is now 50 years almost, 40, 50 years. So I think that part of the culture of what the neighborhood is about, and what the memories, the collective memories of people in Tampa are of Ybor City, and even if you project out to people that have visited Tampa in the last decades, that's something that's really integral to what Ybor City is. So I just would like to put that out there for you to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to comment? Okay. Seeing none. Mr. Vila?
So we're here to review the first criteria. Request is for the removal of the grand tree. There's written document that you all have. There's testimony that was given this morning by both sides. I would have you focus on the finding of fact. I believe there's still some outstanding items that have not been addressed in the literature that was presented to us that should be put onto the record. We're here to look at if the grand tree in question meets the criteria for removal.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Vila. Okay, the commissioners can then, we're going to ask questions of the applicant, starting with Mr. Coyle.
I don't have any questions at this time, but I have comments.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You want, okay.
I mean, we'll have discussion later. This is our opportunity to ask questions. If
So
you
we'll have
need
a discussion
additional,
just about the actual tree.
we can do that later if you
Okay.
want.
I don't have any comments for.
No questions at this time.
And nor do I, no questions.
Well, I have questions. Okay, so the applicant put forward a certain diagram. It was when it broke down the site into 3 phases. Can we look at that diagram? And is it possible to locate where that tree is on that diagram?
Are you talking about the drawing that I put up?
I think it was one of your diagrams where you talked about the three
The 3
different
separate
zones.
buildings. Sure. If we could have it would be on my back about 2 slides, maybe 3 or 4 slides.
So on
Oh,
the,
I got it, sorry.
Yep.
I wish I had a laser pointer here.
Yeah,
It's
Do we-
pretty much at the intersection of all 3 pieces.
okay, so it's between the entry, the main building, and the south building, kind of in that
Correct.
trinity right there. Okay. Where's the stage located?
Stage is located towards the left under the high bay.
Is it on the north elevation, like the north side, the west? Is it kind of in the corner?
If I could switch this, I can point.
You have hard copy? Yeah. Can we go to Elmo, please? Thank you.
Zoom out. So, okay, great. So the interior design of the building is a three-story view area. So we have the ground level, which is standing. The middle level is the premium level, and then the third level are stage seats. The stage is located approximately about right here. We have the loading dock. We have the backstage.
He's on the, let's see.
Oh, okay.
You see, we have the loading dock, we have backstage, and we have the stage approximately about right here. The second and third level cross through this area on both sides, so the tree would disrupt all ability to have the second and third level, primarily from an egress standpoint, from a fire code standpoint, and from, honestly, just a visibility standpoint. The diagram of the disruption of the tree comes very close to the mixing station for the events and is just outside of the proscenium. On the first level, the entry is here. We have security, we have vertical circulation in this red box, and then we also have our merchandise and our bar. We want to keep the bar outside of the performance area, so there's not noise and lights and sounds. You have the restrooms, which are right about right here, bar, and then security and vertical circulation. So the tree disrupts those items. Primarily, it disrupts the ability to provide any type of egress from the upper levels and vertical accessibility.
Okay, and so from an architectural standpoint, that you kind of, we're getting ahead of ourselves here a little bit, but so the south zone is more warehouse, industrial, the west side is a little bit more urban brick, or is it that kind of reversed?
The south side is warehouse industrial. The east side is Ybor balconies, stucco, kind of normal facade. And then the north side would be stucco with large windows.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go probably back to, I'm not sure who's going to answer this question, but in order to remove a grand tree, there's certain mitigation that needs to be performed. What is the mitigation? I haven't heard any of that for this proposed solution.
The mitigation, Pedarica dark moss, the mitigation is based off of how many trees can be replanted to the growth or to match the canopy area in 5 years. And the way that calculation works out is about 2.5 inch trees. That's already been calculated and tabulated in the PDA. And so mitigation and replacement is tracked globally to that whole rezone, or the whole PDA site plan.
Okay, but this particular tree that we're talking about today would have a mitigation of 13 and a half.
2.5 inch trees.
2.5 inch. And where are those going to go? Can you want to address that?
Throughout the entire district, along, kind of mixed in with all the other requirements triggered by the other parcels. And the PDA also allows us to plant it on adjacent streets.
Okay. And basically you're mimicking, from a layman's standpoint, you're mimicking the tree canopy that you're removing with new trees that would match that, not in growth, but in canopy.
Right, in canopy area, in 5 years, the new trees at that amount will grow to the same size, that's the intent, as that tree was.
Okay.
Size in canopy, sorry.
And do you know where those trees are accounted for, or is it just a general open-ended, somewhere within the PDA boundary?
General open-ended, so we have it's kind of some novel accounting of tree mitigation requirements by parcel that we're already tracking, but nothing has been built yet, and we're still designing other properties. I mean, they're in construction, but no replacement tree has been planted for any of the parcels yet.
Okay. And I think, see your reasonable configuration criteria. Do you want to kind of touch on some high points on that? And I'd also touch on some hardship criteria, bullet points too. I'm not sure if that's you, Mr. Petrarca.
Yes, it will be me for both. So Ken assisted in clarifying, adding additional detail to the reasonable reconfiguration spirit. I went through it originally, but with a development that is essentially the size of the lot, I mean, is the size of the lot, reasonable reconfiguration is really difficult. There's no way we can move something that we're allowed to build at that size when we're limited both vertically by the EBOR limits and the PDA limits, and horizontally by the site itself. So like I said, we can't provide, there's no construction we can do to preserve the tree, like suspending the slab because the tree's in the building. We can't we can't add floors to make up the square footage because of the height limit. And there's been testimony already that will dramatically impact the internal form and function of the building if that tree disrupts the upper levels and lower level of the building floor plan. And I can speak to the hardship criteria as well. There are practical difficulties unique to this site. It's in a PDA. It's already been through this board several, or at least once, I think twice though, and City Council for approval. And the tree is located internal of any setback that would normally be allowed, or not allowed, but exist in the district. We did not do anything to place this tree here, relocate this tree here. It was always intended that in due time we would be making this request. There's language in the PDA documentation stating that we can make it once we understand the site better. There's no impact to the health and safety or welfare. This is strictly one tree internal to a site. The variance is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. The comp plan envisions mixed-use urban infill on multiple land use policies. It does recognize the value of mature trees, and that value is addressed in the mitigation requirements citywide and in the mitigation we're proposing in the district as a whole. And if the variance were approved, is substantial justice being done, the variance would allow for the development to proceed as intended when it came before this board originally, when it came before City Council, and subject to the CA requirements that will be discussed further if this moves forward.
Okay.
And one last hardship. And the removal of the tree doesn't impact the historic district guidelines. It promotes the architectural guidelines by not providing uncharacteristic, less out areas for tree preservation, which is not a pattern seen in the district, unless it's really small development like single-family development. In the larger, more intense development on 7th and up and north and south, and the lower numbered streets, grand trees are rare.
Okay, and this may not be for you, but how did the applicant come to the seat level of 4,400 seats? Is that just kind of maxed out? And maybe they want to comment on that. Is that a sweet spot number, or?
Given the Tampa Bay music market, it's a missing middle in our market, with venues from 500 up to about 3,000 person, and then we skip into Benchmark Arena and the amphitheater over 10,000. So it's a very important number. The tree, if we were able to work around all of the vertical accessibility, all the egress, would remove upwards of roughly, I'd say 1,800 seats from the venue. It is a significant chunk.
Yeah, I think your documentation stated 500 seats. would be
500
lost.
seats on the first level, but then it would remove additional seats on the second and third level.
Okay. Are there seats on the first level? I thought you said it was standing.
Standing, seats,
Occupants.
standing occupants, patrons. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And, okay, I'm okay for questions. Vivian?
Commissioners, Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Their arborists had put documentation into the record, and we also have city staff from Natural Resources here that reviewed this in length, and I believe they have some comments as well.
I was just going to ask about the mitigation.
This parcel is a part of a PDA, and it's a very, very large, development. Trees rated
Mary,
B-
could you speak up a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
State your name, please.
Mary Danielitz Bryson, Natural Resources, and I have been sworn. Trees rated B6 are not real common in the city of Tampa. Most of your trees rate out in the C range. So a B6 tree is a tree very worthy of preservation. The intent of the code requires that you preserve and protect grand trees, and that if they're hazardous, we allow them to come out. Or you look at reasonable reconfiguration first of all, and you really tug, pull, push to try to accommodate the tree on site. According to the tree canopy and the urban forest analysis of 2021, CDB has an average tree canopy of 8%. The Channel District has 7% tree canopy, and Ybor City has 10%. It's very important that we keep the trees that we have in that area. It's a live oak, and live oaks are our most resilient, bulletproof trees that we have. They're our strongest and longest lived trees. They can live, 350 years more. There are several comp plan policies that encourage the retention of trees within the city of Tampa and to enhance the tree canopy. And the vision book, went to the rezoning, and I pulled up page 34 of the vision book, and the vision book allows for relocation of grand trees as an option. So that is something that we have not considered. Again, it's a B6 tree, B8 tree, and it's worthy of preservation.
Mary, a quick question for you.
Yes.
We didn't see any documentation here that relocation was a viable option. From my knowledge, the only tree a grand tree that was relocated that I know of, that I think of, is the one at UT on the campus there. How big was that tree that they relocated? Because that was a huge effort.
The latest one that was done in 2014 was about a 38-inch tree. 10 years earlier, there were two very large trees that were transplanted. The one has been transplanted at Willow and Kennedy, and it's still there, and it's doing fine.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'd like to ask Ricky, your experience in transplanting trees, what kind of recommendation might you make in that regard?
There is a Rich Pederica Dark Moss. There's a candidate site of the park, the Gasworks Park, where it's been considered. We did not continue with that consideration due to crossing the streetcar tracks. the complexity of that portion and the likelihood of success, which for any large relocation or transplantation like this is 50-50, roughly. It did not seem to be feasible to expend up potentially 6 figures for a relocation, 50% success with additional challenges along the relocation pathway to the receiving site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The applicant, you have a few minutes if you'd like. You have 5 minutes for a rebuttal, summarization of comments, and then we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing and have discussion on the case in front of us for the variance.
No rebuttal?
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. We can have discussion of the commissioners on the case. You want to start? Or?
Yeah, I think there is a concern, of course, in the removal of any tree anywhere, anytime. However, when you look at the overhead photographs of that area and that particular site's location with respect to the heart of Ybor City, which is the concern of many of the persons who spoke here this morning, that area is fairly barren and lacking anything, not just buildings, but foliage as well, but for a few trees. I think that my concern in the mitigation request would be that they consider a larger caliper of a tree than 2.5 inches, because it's such a tiny little tree, and yeah, it'll grow in 5 years, but as a replacement tree for something that is as canopied as these are, I think I would definitely ask for the consideration of a larger canopy, a larger caliper tree to be put in its replacement. And to kind of understand better where those trees would go. The drawings of the renderings of the building show a number of trees around the perimeter, but no one has spoken of those yet. And I think it would be important to have that addressed when we go to the, or if we get to the next phase of the considerations this morning.
Well, for me, I guess I would echo that, but I mean, the evaluations I've seen, I mean, they don't classify these major live oaks as hazardous or imminently failing. You know, when I look at the health level, they're good. I want to protect grand oaks. I think they're important to the community. They're part of the historic neighborhood character. Long-term can be, value cannot be replaced quickly. I mean, it takes years or decades for these trees to actually grow to that size. And I think preservation of mature canopy trees should be treated as mainly a primary design rather than a secondary design. And then in terms of relocation, I've never seen a successful live oak relocation of that size in Florida. They normally just cut it down and then build new houses in other areas. So I'm definitely for the preservation of the live oaks within Ybor. So.
I agree with both parties that have spoken, whether it's the trees more so in the scope of what we were given that are a little bit larger in scale to kind of what it seems the replacement might be considered as now, or more investigation into a possible relocation for the preservation of this grand tree.
Yeah, I kind of struggle with this one. You know, I think we've seen kind of what their proposed solution is for the site, but I haven't seen any proposed solutions to work around that existing grand tree. There's a lot of sensitivity. I think the applicant comes back and says they're entitled to this much development, and it's all zero setback, and we're entitled to 3 stories and 84,000 square feet on that site. But they don't account for the grand tree. I think there's a lot of things that could be done here to make this venue a little bit more site-specific. It doesn't need to be 0 setback in all corners and on all lines. It doesn't need to be 84,000 square feet. I think what I struggle with is the seating capacity. You know, I mean, 2 of our premier large, medium-sized venues in the area, Ruth Eckerd and Mahaffey Theater, are 2,000 seats each. So this is like double that. And those are excellent examples of venues that are regional and successful in the crowds that they bring. So I don't know what Sun Dome is 7,000 seats in a configuration, and obviously get up to Amelie. But you know, I think the intent is right here for what the applicant is trying to do, to bring a venue here, engage the community, make it active. I just think the scale is a little bit too big, and I think it doesn't respect the grand oak that's on site. I think there's a lot of things that could be done there. You know, reconfiguring of the stage and the loading dock, and I think there's certain things that we're kind of seeing in the preliminary that they're successfully addressing the egress to be friendly to the neighborhood, but I think a lot more can be done here, and I think it's a disservice to that grand oak and to the neighborhood to just move on with this size venue. I think a lot of work could be done here to make this a little bit more manageable, a little bit more Ybor size instead of, you know, like an amphitheater type of size. So I'm not a big fan of taking this tree down. I think the applicant could do a lot more there with the site that they have. Entitlements, that's a maximum entitlement. You know, it certainly can exist as something smaller. When we talk about the reasonable configuration criteria, it wasn't, I didn't see anything in there about relocating the tree. The hardship criteria never mentioned anything about that, so I don't think that the applicant has successfully met this, exhausted all potential options available at their disposal. So I'm not in favor of this tree being removed. We can have further discussion or make a motion or whatever you guys want to do.
I don't know, do they want to continue this, or?
We can ask the applicant if they want to do that too. It seems that this will probably be a denial of this request for a variance. The applicant has the option available to them to continue this case and reevaluate the criteria. If that's an option they want to go, or we can go for a straight vote.
Good morning.
Mr. Carter.
Tyler Hudson, 400 North Ashley Drive. We'd like to request a continuance to I believe it's the June 23rd meeting of this commission.
Okay.
We acknowledge the concerns raised. That's the date. All right, sorry. It's too busy. There's been an update. We would request a continuance to July 28th at the direction of staff.
July 28th.
Mr. Fernandez.
July 28th.
That's correct. That would be at the request of the agent to continue to July 28th, 2026 at 9 a.m.
Okay.
And we're going to need to do that for both the variance and for the CA at this point.
Understood.
But Dennis, a question. Now, both the variance and the preliminary CA have the same case number.
Right, I
So
would
we just combine them both?
Combine them and illustrate that in the motion.
Okay. I move that the variance request for case number, the variance and the preliminary certificate of appropriateness request for case number BLC 2600000117 for the property located at 1419 East 4th Avenue and 1402 North 15th Street be continued to the July 28, 2026 meeting, public hearing at 9 a.m. to allow the petitioner and the staff to gather more information.
Second. Okay, all in favor of said motion to continue, Mr. Fernandez?
Just to specify with difficulty here, and that was July 28, 2026, correct?
Yes, yes, I think I said that, didn't
July
I?
28, 2026, public hearing to be held in council chambers at 9 a.m.
So amended. Okay, all in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. It's continued to July 28th, 9 a.m. Here's that docket. Do we have a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor to receive and file? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next Barrio Latino public hearing will be Tuesday, June 23rd at 9 a.m. in City Council chambers. Seeing no business in front of us, we are adjourned. Thank you all.